Get out of my house if you're going to lie to our faces. Those were the last words my father said to me before he slammed the door. Not whispered in private, not murmured in confusion, shouted across the dining room, while my mother stared silently into her half-finished plate of enchiladas and my younger sister Olivia clutched her empty blue velvet jewelry box like it was a holy relic. I stood there, frozen, a fork still in my hand, the taste of green salsa turning bitter on my tongue. My family didn't even ask. They just decided. They believed I stole it. The necklace, the $9,000 white gold and diamond necklace my parents had given Olivia for her 21st birthday just 2 months ago. The same necklace I had paid for, and they thought I took it. I didn't even argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry, not until I reached my car and realized I didn't even have anywhere to go. I had driven 20 minutes from my apartment to have Sunday dinner with my parents, like I always did. I had brought groceries like I always did. I had checked the mailbox, replaced a light bulb on the porch, fixed the humming refrigerator door, like I always did. And now I was gone, exiled, just like that. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how easily they believed it. After everything I'd done for them, they hadn't even paused to question the story. Olivia said it. They accepted it. No one asked why I would do such a thing. No one wondered what I could possibly gain from it. No one said, "That doesn't sound like Marina." Because in their eyes it apparently did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you something about me. I'm Marina Alvarez. I'm 28 years old. And up until last week, I thought being the responsible one in a family meant being safe, respected, trusted, loved unconditionally. I had no idea how easy it was to erase all that with a single lie. Growing up in the Alvarez household meant one thing above all else. Family comes first. My father, Ernesto, used to say it like a commandment, especially on Sunday nights when we all sat around the dining table in our modest home in Stamford, Connecticut. Blood is thicker than bills, he liked to joke when we were kids. You can always earn money, but you only get one family. I used to believe him. I used to repeat it to myself every time I skipped a vacation to pay for mom's medication or postponed a raise negotiation to drive Olivia to college campus tours. It wasn't just obligation. It was love. Or at least it started that way. My parents weren't bad people. They weren't lazy or cruel or openly manipulative. They were just tired. Life had worn them down, stripped away the shine from their marriage, and left them clutching memories of better years. My father once ran a small but thriving construction business. My mother worked part-time at the local florist and baked the best cinnamon rolls on our block. But after the 2008 recession hit and my mom's rheumatoid arthritis worsened, everything changed. The business closed. The mortgage payments started stacking up. The medical bills arrived monthly, thick as catalogs. They mortgaged the house twice just to stay afloat. I saw it happening. I was 17 at the time, old enough to understand, young enough to feel helpless. Olivia didn't see it at all. She was only 10. Our parents went out of their way to protect her from reality. While I worked part-time jobs and applied for scholarships, Olivia got birthday parties with rented ponies and a brand new Honda Civic at 16. I never blamed her for that, not then. I told myself over and over that this was what older siblings did. They carried more, so the younger ones didn't have to. I didn't realize that someday that weight would be used against me. So when Dad called me 2 years ago, voice low and broken, asking if I could help with a couple bills for a few months, I said yes. Without hesitation. He asked that Olivia never find out, that it would embarrass your mother and crush your sister to know how bad things are. I agreed. And like that, it started. At first, it was just the mortgage, then the utilities, then the property taxes, then Mom's treatments, and then Olivia's college tuition. I paid it all, quietly, faithfully, without a single thank you card or acknowledgement. I just kept going, telling myself I was doing the right thing, that this was what family meant. And yet here I was on the cold pavement outside the house I had financially carried for years, being accused of stealing the very thing I had bought, a $9,000 necklace. I had worked extra shifts to cover that birthday gift, had delayed my own dental work that month. I had even picked it up myself from the boutique, wrapped it in the blue velvet box, and handed it to my dad so he could surprise Olivia at her dinner. Now it was gone, and so was I. They didn't just lose a necklace that night, they lost me. I used to think I was lucky, not in the lottery ticket, lightning strike way, but lucky in the quiet, practical sense, born to decent people in a quiet town, with a roof over my head, clothes on my back, and two parents who tried. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt solid, reliable. My childhood in Stamford wasn't filled with wealth, but it had rhythm. Mom's flower shop shifts, Dad's construction jobs, Sunday barbecues, Olivia's dance recitals, my science fairs. Nothing spectacular, just us. And when things got bad, when the economy collapsed and Dad's business went under and the bills started coming faster than the checks, I told myself we'd get through it because we were together, because we were family. That's how I justified everything that came after. I was 17 when Dad laid off the last of his crew, 18 when the foreclosure notice came in the mail, 19 when Mom's hand started swelling so badly she couldn't open a jar, and she cried because she couldn't braid Olivia's hair for school. I was also 19 when I got into college on partial scholarship and started waitressing at night to cover the rest. Olivia was 12 and still going to soccer camp. I didn't question the imbalance. I accepted it the way people accept gravity, inevitable. By 21, I was sleeping 5 hours a night, studying computer science, and sending home gas money. By 23, I'd graduated and landed a job at a growing tech firm in New Haven. I cried in the parking lot the first day, not because I was scared, but because I knew I could finally help more. And help I did. It started with small things, paying off a few overdue medical bills, sending Mom a new coat for Christmas, covering Olivia's dance shoes when she wanted to audition for college arts programs. Then the mortgage fell behind. Then the furnace broke. Then Mom's insurance changed, and the copays quadrupled. Dad called less and less often to ask, maybe out of shame, maybe because he didn't have to anymore. I always sent the money. They stopped asking. They just expected. Still, I didn't resent it. I told myself it was love. I told myself I could handle it because I was strong, and Olivia deserved to be sheltered, and Mom shouldn't have to worry. And it wasn't like I was struggling. My salary grew, my stock options matured. I was comfortable, even generous. I bought myself a small one-bedroom condo in Stamford and still managed to visit home twice a week, bringing groceries, fixing the leaky sink, organizing insurance paperwork. But slowly, silently, the balance shifted. What began as help turned into obligation. And I didn't see it happening. When Olivia got into an expensive private university, my parents promised her they'd cover it. Never mind that they were already underwater financially. I found out only because I came over one evening and heard them arguing behind the laundry room door. "We can't tell her we can't afford it," Dad whispered. "She's already picked her major." "She'll be crushed," Mom said. "What kind of parents can't pay for college?" I remember standing in the hallway, holding a grocery bag full of discounted produce, thinking, what kind of sister would I be if I didn't offer? So I offered. "Just until you're back on your feet," I said. They nodded, grateful, quiet, but there was no discussion of repayment, no budget, no shared plan, just silence and checks and the quiet erosion of any boundary between my wallet and their lives. By year 2, I was paying Olivia's full tuition, $45,000 per year, plus books, plus rent, plus groceries because dorm food didn't sit right with her. She didn't know I was paying. Mom and Dad told her it came from family savings, grants, vague things. And maybe it was easier to let her believe that. Maybe I wanted her to stay innocent. But the more she floated above reality, the more I sank into it. And still I kept showing up. Every Sunday, 6 p.m. sharp, I'd walk through the front door of the house I was paying for, carrying takeout or Tupperware, smiling at Mom in the kitchen, hugging Dad in the den, listening to Olivia chatter about professors and party themes and how the financial aid office is such a pain. I laughed. I nodded. I said nothing. The week before her 21st birthday, she said she wanted a necklace she'd seen downtown. White gold with inset diamonds. It's a little pricey, but it's like heirloom material, you know. She smiled brightly at Dad. Don't worry, I know you'll figure it out. He called me the next day. I didn't ask questions. I just transferred the money. That necklace wasn't just a gift. It was a symbol of how far I was willing to go to hold this family together. A $9,000 sacrifice tucked into blue velvet, wrapped in tissue paper, sealed with hope that maybe, just maybe they'd see me. They didn't. When it went missing, they didn't even ask if I'd seen it. They just looked at me, and I knew. They say love is selfless, that when you give to someone you care about, you shouldn't expect anything in return. And I used to believe that. For a long time, I believed it so fiercely that I wore my sacrifices like armor, thinking they made me noble, thinking they meant something. But the truth is, when you give everything and get nothing, you don't feel strong. You feel invisible. That birthday dinner was supposed to be special. Mom had made Olivia's favorite garlic butter steak with asparagus and her triple chocolate cake. Dad poured wine. I arrived early, helped set the table, even washed the crystal glasses Olivia liked. I had picked up the necklace myself from the boutique downtown, asked them to gift wrap it, added a handwritten tag that said, "To our shining star." I gave the box to Dad in the kitchen and said, "You do the honors." He grinned and nodded. No one asked if I wanted to be the one to give it. When Olivia opened the box, her reaction was everything I'd hoped for. She squealed, clutched the necklace to her chest, and jumped up to hug our parents. "You're the best," she cried. "Seriously, this is unreal. I don't know anyone whose parents would do something like this." I took pictures. I smiled. I laughed when she asked Dad to help fasten it around her neck. She spun toward the mirror and gushed about how sparkly it looked. I remember catching my own reflection in the mirror behind her. Half smile, wine glass in hand, the older sister in the background. Always in the background. She never looked at me, never thanked me. Of course she didn't know. But still, later that night, after we cut the cake and opened more presents, I walked to my car with a gift bag containing a soft gray sweater and a $25 Target gift card. "It's not much," Mom had said, "but we know you don't like a fuss." And I had smiled. Of course I had. I always smiled. That night, in my apartment, I hung the sweater in my closet next to last year's sweater and the one from the year before. Different colors. Same silence. Still, I told myself this was fine. Olivia was happy. My parents were happy. The house was warm. The lights stayed on. Mom had her medication. Olivia had her future. I had usefulness. And sometimes that felt like enough. Then came Sunday dinner. 2 weeks after Olivia's birthday, we gathered as usual. Mom made enchiladas verdes her specialty. I came early to help with the prep. Dad and Olivia were in the living room watching basketball. Everything felt normal, cozy easy, until Olivia set down her fork halfway through dinner and said, "Has anyone seen my necklace?" The table fell silent. She reached up instinctively to her collarbone, the diamond one. "From my birthday. I was going to wear it tonight, but it's not in the jewelry box." Mom blinked. "Did you check your dresser?" Olivia nodded. "I always keep it in the blue box. It's not there." I leaned forward. "When was the last time you wore it?" "Last weekend. Melissa's party. I put it back as soon as I got home." Dad frowned. "You sure? You were pretty tipsy that night." "I wasn't that drunk," Olivia huffed. "I know I put it away." The search began. We checked her bedroom first. Every drawer, every purse, under every pile of clothes. The bathroom, the kitchen, the laundry room. Olivia grew more agitated with each passing minute. Her voice sharpened. Her movements turned frantic. And slowly, I felt the shift. She started following me with her eyes. When I opened the linen closet, she stood just behind me. When I offered to check the guest room, she said she already had, even though she hadn't. When we finally returned to the dinner table, reheating our food like everything hadn't cracked wide open, the silence was thick. "You were in my room earlier, weren't you, Marina?" Olivia said suddenly. I looked up, startled. "What?" "I thought I saw you coming out when I went upstairs." "I went to the bathroom once. I didn't go in your room." My door was open. I always keep it closed. "Maybe Mom went in." I offered. Mom shook her head. "No, I didn't do laundry today." The implication wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I didn't take your necklace," I said calmly. Firmly. "Why would I?" "It's a $9,000 necklace," Olivia replied. "It doesn't just disappear." I stared at her. "Well, it didn't disappear into my pocket." Dad cleared his throat. "No one's accusing anyone. But it is strange." I looked at him, at my father, the man whose mortgage I'd paid every month for 3 years. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger at that table. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia's face across the table. Innocent, but just a little too practiced. Her voice, just a little too controlled. Her accusation hadn't been direct, but it didn't need to be. The seeds had been planted. She knew it. I knew it. And from the silence on my parents' faces, I could tell they knew it too. Around midnight, I got the first text. "Just so you know, I've looked everywhere. It's definitely not in the house." I stared at the message. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Then came the second. "If you took it as some kind of joke, it's not funny anymore. Just give it back and we'll forget about it." My heart dropped. "Not if you know anything." "Not, I'm scared. Can we talk?" No. She had already decided. I typed a dozen replies, deleted them all. Finally, I sent, "I didn't take your necklace, Olivia. I would never do that to you. I hope you find it soon." Her reply came in seconds. "Whatever. Just know Mom and Dad are really upset." Sleep never came. I stared at the ceiling until the morning light filtered through my blinds, every hour sharpening the ache in my chest. How did this happen? How did I become the villain in a story I never agreed to be part of? At 9 a.m., I stopped waiting. I needed to face it head on. Clear the air. Talk to them. Surely, in person, they'd remember who I was, what I meant to them. Surely, face to face, this would all fall apart. I pulled into the driveway just after 10. The house looked the same. White siding, faded blue shutters. My car had helped pay for the new gutters last fall. That thought hit harder than it should have. Inside, the air felt thick. Mom was at the sink, scrubbing dishes like they'd personally offended her. She barely looked at me. Dad sat at the table, coffee in hand, newspaper untouched. "Where's Olivia?" I asked. "Upstairs," he said flatly. "She's been tearing apart her room all morning." I forced a smile. "Look, I understand everyone's upset, but I need to say it clearly. I didn't take that necklace. I have no idea where it is." Before Dad could respond, Olivia appeared in the doorway, holding the now infamous blue velvet box empty. "Then how do you explain this?" she demanded. "I found it in your old bedroom, shoved under the bookshelf." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible. I haven't been in that room in weeks." "Well," she said, eyes gleaming, "the box didn't walk there on its own." Dad stood up slowly. "Marina, if you're in trouble, if something's going on, you should have just told us." I blinked. "In trouble?" He looked almost offended. "You don't need to sneak around and steal from your own sister." The absurdity hit me so hard I almost laughed. Steal from my sister? The girl whose entire education, car, and lifestyle were funded by me? The girl who never once had to think about how bills were paid? "This is ridiculous," I said. "I make more than enough money to buy 10 of those necklaces. Why would I steal one?" Then how did the box end up in your room? He snapped. It's not my room anymore, I said. I haven't lived here in years. Anyone could have put it there. I didn't say it. Not yet. But we all knew who anyone could be. Olivia gasped, wide-eyed and dramatic. Are you saying I planted it? Why would I do that? Mom finally turned around. Please, let's not fight. But Dad wasn't done. The explanation is clear. Someone took that necklace, and all signs point to you. I stared at him. My own father. I felt my face burn with humiliation and disbelief. What signs? I asked. A box? That could have been moved by anyone? That's not evidence. That's a story. He crossed his arms. Why would anyone want to set you up? I opened my mouth to answer, and then stopped, because I wasn't ready to say it out loud. I wasn't ready to admit what I was starting to suspect. But the worst part? I didn't have proof. I don't know, I said quietly, but I know I didn't take it. There was a long pause. Then I spoke again. Let's check the cameras. We'd installed a basic security system last year, one of those doorbell setups with cloud storage. It wouldn't show who took the necklace, but it would show me arriving empty-handed. It might clear the fog. Dad grunted and pulled out his laptop. We all gathered around. I watched myself arrive at 4:06 p.m., carrying a single grocery bag and my purse. I watched myself leave at 9:12 p.m., still carrying just my purse and phone. The quality wasn't great, but it was clear. I hadn't left with any jewelry box. Still, Olivia leaned in. She could have tucked it in her purse, or just taken the necklace. That would fit in a pocket. Dad rubbed his forehead. $9,000 could solve a lot of problems. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I pulled out my phone and tapped a few times. The mortgage payment reminder had just arrived. Without thinking, I approved the $3,000 transfer. Their mortgage. Paid. Again. No one noticed. I don't need to steal, I said, setting my phone down. I'm the one paying to keep this house running. Mom's voice was soft. Even successful people struggle sometimes. I turned to her. You really think I'd lie to you? After everything I've done? She looked down at her hands. I had my answer, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever recover from it. I left the house with my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. I don't remember walking to the car. I don't remember turning the ignition. I just remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, and still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. Not yet. What I felt was something colder, deeper, like something vital inside me had snapped, not from tension, but from exhaustion, from years of trying too hard to be everything for everyone, and ending up as the villain anyway. I sat in the driveway for several minutes, too numb to drive. Then, as I adjusted the mirror to reverse out, I caught a glimpse of the upstairs window, Olivia's window. She was there, watching, our eyes locked. And for the briefest moment, I saw it. Not guilt, not fear, not confusion, satisfaction. It was gone in a blink, replaced with a blank stare, but it had been there. The corner of her lips, the tilt of her chin, the tiny glint of victory in her eyes. That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup, and she had won. The realization didn't make me cry. It didn't make me scream. It made me quiet, dead quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when you stop hoping something will be different, the kind that creeps in when you finally accept they were never going to choose me. I drove home in silence, parked, walked upstairs, didn't turn on any lights. I sat in the dark on my living room floor and let the stillness surround me. And then I opened my laptop. At first, I just stared at the screen. But slowly my fingers began to move. Spreadsheet. Title: Alvarez Family Financial Support 2020 to present. I went line by line. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of deposits, payments, silent bailouts. Mortgage. $108,000 utilities. $12,600 property taxes, $22,500 medical bills, $47,800 Olivia's tuition and expenses, $151,200 groceries, cars, gifts, household repairs, $35,000 total, $377,100. The number sat on the screen like a slap. $377,000. Enough for a house, a retirement fund, a business. Enough for a life of my own. I had been bleeding money into a household that now believed I was a thief. A household that never once asked how I was doing. That never once thanked me. That now wanted me gone. I stared at the total again. My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't sink. I felt clear. The next morning, I called Janet Perez, my financial advisor. I'd spoken to her once back when I started making six figures and wasn't sure what to do with it. I hadn't called since. We met that afternoon in her office downtown. I brought printouts, bank statements, the spreadsheet, receipts. I showed her everything. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and said softly, "Marina, this is unsustainable. It's generous. It's noble. But it's not healthy." "I know that now," I replied. She asked one question. "Are you legally bound to any of these payments?" I shook my head. No contracts. No written agreements. I just paid. "Then you can stop. Today." Those words hit like a bell ringing in my chest. Later that evening, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer, William Chin. He confirmed what Janet had said. I had no legal obligation to keep paying anything. Tuition? Not my contract. Mortgage? Not in my name. Utilities? Paid from my card voluntarily. "This is a matter of personal boundaries now," he said. "Not law." He handed me a folder. "You're not wrong to stop. In fact, you'd be foolish to continue." I walked out of that office lighter than I had felt in years. Back at home, I opened every account I had linked to my family, canceled the mortgage autopay, disconnected my card from the utility accounts, withdrew Olivia's upcoming tuition installment. For each, I saved the confirmation. Every click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then I sat down and began writing a letter. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was factual. 3 pages, titled, "Notice of Termination of Financial Support." It included the total amount I had contributed, a breakdown, dates, receipts, and a simple statement, "Effective immediately, all financial support is ended." I am not open to discussion. This is not an act of revenge. This is the end of a pattern where I give everything, and you question my integrity. I sealed the letter in an envelope. No return address, just my initials in the corner. I placed it by the door, ready to mail in the morning. That night, I blocked Olivia's number. I left my parents' lines open, not out of hope, but out of respect. If they called to apologize, I'd listen. But I wasn't coming back. Not as the fixer, not as the scapegoat, and never again as the invisible provider. 3 days after I mailed the letter, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I knew all too well, my father's cell. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready, but curiosity pulled me back an hour later. I sat on the couch, phone pressed to my ear, listening to his voice fill the room. "What the hell is this, Marina? Some kind of joke?" His tone was sharp, accusatory. "You can't just pull out without warning. The mortgage is due next week. Your mother's insurance only covers part of her prescriptions. Olivia's tuition," he stopped himself mid-sentence, then snapped, "This is childish. You're punishing us because we called you out about the necklace." I almost laughed. Punishing them? No. I had been punishing myself for years. When he paused, I hit redial. He answered on the first ring. "This isn't a joke," I said calmly. "Everything in that letter is true. I've been financially supporting you for 3 years. Silently. Fully. And this is how you've treated me in return. You're doing this because you're mad, he snapped. No, I said. I'm not mad. I'm done. He scoffed. We relied on that money. Yes, I said. You did. Without asking where it came from. Without thanking me. Without telling Olivia that her entire lifestyle was paid for by the sister she accused of stealing. A long pause followed. Then he said quietly, What do you mean, accused? She didn't accuse. She just couldn't find the necklace. She had it, I replied. The night you all confronted me in the driveway. I saw it, reflected in her phone screen. She tucked it under her collar. She staged the whole thing. He didn't respond. You didn't even consider I could be innocent. Not once. He cleared his throat. Even if that were true, you can't just cut us off. I already did, I said and hung up. Hours later, my mother called. Her tone was different, softer, shakier. Rebecca, she began and then caught herself. Marina, please, the mortgage company called. Olivia's school called. We didn't know everything you were doing. You never told us. That's the problem, Mom, I replied. I shouldn't have had to. We're your family. No, I said gently. Family protects each other. Family trusts each other. You believed I was a thief. You let Olivia plant that box and stood by as Dad threw me out. It was a mistake, she whispered. We were upset. People say things they don't mean. But people also reveal what they truly believe when they're upset, I said. You didn't defend me. You didn't hesitate. And now that the money's gone, suddenly you're sorry. There was silence on the other end. I'll cover Mom's medication for 1 more month, I added. After that, you'll need to find another solution. Marina, I'm not heartless, Mom. I'm just done being used. That night, I received 10 texts from Olivia. They weren't apologies. They were tantrums. You're so dramatic. I didn't make you pay for anything. Good luck being alone for the rest of your life. You'll regret this. I read them all. Didn't respond. The next day, I got a call from the university's financial office. Olivia's payment hadn't gone through. I told them, politely, to contact her directly. The fallout continued for days. Voicemails from Dad, emails from Mom, a Facebook message from my aunt, a guilt-ridden wall of shame trying to knock down the boundary I had finally drawn. But I didn't move. For the first time in years, I chose myself. No more auto payments. No more cover-ups. No more pretending love meant quiet sacrifice. 3 weeks later, my mother texted and asked to meet for coffee. I said yes. Neutral location. Public place. 30-minute limit. When I arrived, she looked older, like the stress had finally caught up with her. She held her coffee cup with trembling fingers and said, Olivia confessed. I didn't react. She admitted everything. She said she hid the necklace, that she planted the box. She was jealous of how we always talked about you. She wanted to take you down a notch. She succeeded, I said simply. We should have trusted you. You should have. Mom looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. Are you sorry I was hurt? I asked. Or sorry you lost the money? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. I stood to leave. Marina, she said softly. What now? I don't know, I said. But whatever comes next starts with me. I left that cafe without looking back. Not out of anger, but out of resolve. There had been a time when I would have clung to that apology like a life raft. I would have heard my mother say, I'm sorry, and rushed to fill in the silence with forgiveness, with comfort, with an offer to help just one more time. But not anymore. This wasn't about punishment. This was about balance. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk with the windows open and a breeze cutting through the quiet. I reopened my spreadsheet, not to obsess over the past, but to plan the future. For once, I could look at my bank account and feel like the money in it belonged to me. I started by increasing my 401k contributions, opened a new savings account strictly for emergencies, scheduled a meeting with a financial planner about real estate investment. I finally began to build something for myself. But the financial repair was only half the healing. 2 weeks later, I began therapy. Dr. Lena Thompson specialized in family systems and boundary trauma. She was calm, grounded, and never once told me to just forgive and move on. In fact, in our first session, she said something I'll never forget. What your family did wasn't just a mistake. It was systemic disrespect. They used your silence as permission. She explained how I had been unconsciously cast in the role of the responsible one. How that role, once internalized, becomes a trap. You begin to believe that your value comes only from service, only from sacrifice. They didn't ask how much you were giving, she said, because they didn't want to know. That ignorance allowed them to maintain the illusion that they weren't dependent on you. I sat there in stunned silence, because it was true. They had used my absence of complaint as proof of consent. Over the next few weeks, I met with her regularly. We worked through my guilt, my grief, the shame I hadn't known I carried, not for being accused, but for letting it all go so far, for believing I needed to earn my place in my own family. And slowly, I let go of the narrative that said I had to be their savior to be worthy of their love. I also rebuilt my life beyond work. I joined a local women's hiking group, volunteered on weekends teaching coding basics at a nonprofit boot camp for girls, reconnected with old friends, laughed more, slept better. It was strange at first. Having time, energy, money, autonomy. No one texting me last minute to cover a dentist bill. No middle-of-the-night panics about tuition. No monthly drain into a house that saw me as disposable. Just me. And then something even stranger happened. I began to feel joy again. I took a weekend trip to Maine alone, watched the sunrise over rocky cliffs, coffee in hand, and cried. Not from sadness, but from the release of a burden I hadn't realized I'd carried since I was 17. Around the same time, my parents finally downsized. They sold the house, my house, and moved into a smaller apartment on the other side of Stamford. Dad picked up weekend shifts with an old friend in construction. Mom started working part-time at a local florist. They learned to budget, to call the bank themselves, to ask each other for help. Olivia, from what I heard through mutual connections, had dropped 2 classes but picked up shifts at the campus bookstore. She now paid part of her rent. She had cut back on her social media posts, and her feed, once full of luxury and aesthetic brunches, now showed simple things. Study sessions, coffee mugs, the occasional selfie with no filter and tired eyes. Then came the letter, a handwritten envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in Olivia's handwriting. Inside, 3 pages. I did it, she wrote. I planted the box. I lied. I knew you hadn't taken it, but I wanted to knock you down. I hated how they always talked about how perfect you were. I hated feeling second best. I never expected you to cut us off. I never expected the fallout. I thought you'd just swallow it like you always did. She ended with, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know. I see it now. What you did. What it cost you. What it cost us. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't closure, exactly. It wasn't vindication. It was something else, like watching the first sprout emerge from dry earth after a fire. Small, real, not enough to rebuild on, but enough to begin. 6 months have passed since the night I was thrown out over a $9,000 necklace. It still feels surreal when I say it out loud. But what's even more surreal is how much has changed since then, not just in my family, but in me. We've only had one full family gathering since everything happened. It was awkward, the kind of awkward that settles into every chair, every pause in conversation. Dad over-explained a joke. Mom over-apologized with her eyes. Olivia barely said anything at all. But for the first time, there were no illusions. No fake cheer. No unspoken transactions hanging in the air. And oddly enough, that made it easier to breathe. Olivia is still in school, working part-time. I hear she's managing her own expenses now. She even turned down spring break this year, saying she needed to catch up on reading. I haven't responded to her letter yet. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm not ready. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a landscape you walk toward at your own pace. As for my parents, they've adapted more than I thought they could. Dad started attending community college night classes in project management. Never too old to learn new tricks. He grunted one afternoon when we ran into each other at the grocery store. Mom still works part-time at the florist. Her hands a little steadier now, thanks to new medication. Paid for by her own insurance. I did agree to help with one thing, a specialized prescription that wasn't covered. But I made the terms clear. It would be sent directly to the pharmacy. It would be reviewed every 3 months. And most importantly, it would end immediately if my character was questioned again. They agreed. No arguments. No guilt-tripping. Maybe they were finally learning, too. My relationship with them isn't what it was before, but maybe that's a good thing. What we had before was based on silence and sacrifice. What we have now is cautious, fragile, and honest. I can live with that. As for me, I've never been more grounded. I have savings now. A plan. I'm investing in my future. I've started leading workshops at the coding boot camp, helping women like me, overlooked, overused, but still standing, find power in their skills. I've made new friends, taken real vacations, bought a secondhand kayak, and learned to paddle on weekends. The more distance I get, the more I see it clearly. This wasn't just about a necklace. It was about what we think love should look like. For so long, I believed love meant giving until it hurts. But real love doesn't demand you erase yourself. Real love doesn't shame you for drawing a line. Real love doesn't abandon you at the first accusation. And here's what I've learned. Boundaries aren't selfish. Self-respect isn't revenge. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. To anyone who's listening, who's been the dependable one, the quiet giver, the person whose worth has been measured only by how much you can endure, this is for you. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve relationships where you don't have to prove your goodness with every dollar, every favor, every self-erasure. It took me nearly a decade to learn that lesson. But now that I have, I'll never go back. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of losing myself again. And I won't. Not for family. Not for guilt. Not for a necklace. Not for anyone.